The baddest big three in hoops, and we have to make this a party. Come through, Dre. Where's my girl Drea at?
Oh my God. Hi, Elle. Listen, you know we love you so much. Don't make me cry. Don't make me cry. You threw yourself into women's basketball. You studied, you asked questions, you listened, you learned, you brought terrible dad jokes, but you also brought out the best in us. We love you. We adore you. I'm trying not to cry.
I'm struggling to hold it together too. This is an incredibly emotional moment. Last night, I ran out of Kleenex as I was watching the worldwide leader in woke, ESPN. I was watching all these unknowns, these people I've never heard of. I was watching pretend analysts break down in tears as they said their emotional goodbyes to Elle Duncan. It was just so emotional. It was so sad. Like Uncle KC, Elle Duncan has been a pioneer in women's basketball. As you just heard in the clip from the lady who calls herself Dre, nowadays everybody want to talk like they got something to say, but these three women are so anonymous that even family and friends have forgot about Dre. According to the lady named Dre, Elle Duncan is a pioneer in women's basketball because she asks questions. Uncle KC asks lots of questions about women's basketball, and I get labeled as a hater. I'm one of the people that Angel Reese is clapping back at when she claps back at the haters. I get labeled as a misogynist. I ask plenty of questions about the WNBA dump, serious questions like, who is actually watching this garbage? When they release their roster for the All-Star game, my first questions are who, and who? How come Elle Duncan is honored as a pioneer for asking questions, while Uncle KC is accused of having toxic masculinity? Last night, Elle Duncan gave an emotional farewell speech as she finished her final broadcast at the worldwide leader in woke. Now, all kidding aside, I understand the emotion here. It's difficult to make change. It can be scary to move on. I remember when I quit my job to pursue YouTube full-time. Obviously, I didn't shed tears like Elle Duncan unless they were tears of joy. But even though I was thrilled to get the hell out of there, even though I had been miserable for years, there were still some things that I was going to miss. And to this day, there are still some things that I do miss about it. I miss talking shit with the dudes in the office. We had a great group of guys in the office I used to work at. Even though you promise to stay in touch, once you remove the commonality of work, over time, the dynamic of the relationship changes and everyone moves on. I spent 7, maybe 8 critical years of my life working at the company. For dudes, your late 20s going into your early to mid 30s, those are the years where you're figuring things out. When I walked into the company in May of 2013, I was completely different by the time I left in June of 2021. I literally grew up working at my old job. So even though I hated it towards my final years with the company, I also have this level of appreciation for everything I learned while I was there. If it wasn't for them and the experiences I had working there, I would not be where I am today. So I understand the emotion from Elle Duncan. I understand what she's going through. When Elle Duncan started at ESPN in 2016, she was 32, 33 years old. The Elle Duncan that walked into the worldwide leader in woke in 2016, probably different than the Elle Duncan we see today. She's damn sure more enlightened. She constantly boasts about being awakened, or as her colleagues at ESPN prefer to call it, woke. Speaking of woke, Elle Duncan made a startling admission during her emotional farewell. Maybe startling admission is a term that her pretend friends in the mainstream media would use, but Uncle KC prefers to call it a lie. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Let's go and get to the sponsor for today's video, my good friends at Drop It Wine. Now, I quit drinking about 18 months ago, but every once in a while, I'll want to have a glass of wine with dinner or have a drink or two at happy hour with my friends. Damn near every time I do, I get an instant headache after one glass of wine. Hell, sometimes all it takes half a glass. I thought this was my body not being used to the alcohol. However, it could be caused by preservatives in the wine, and that's where Drop It Wine steps in. Drop It Wine is the ultimate solution to your wine sensitivities from sulfites and tannins. All you do is put 1 or 2 drops in your glass of wine, and you no longer have to worry about the pending headache or the rosy cheeks. Drops from Drop It Wine do not change the taste of your drink. Matter of fact, it actually makes astringent red smoother. Drop It Wine has been independently tested and verified by an American-based wine laboratory in Napa Valley. And Drop It Wine is also made right here in the USA. This would make the perfect stocking stuffer for Christmas or as an accessory to any wine that you're giving someone as a gift. So click the link in the description below. Use my promo code BTL20, BTL20. Receive 20% off your first purchase with Drop It Wine. Last night was Elle Duncan's final broadcast of SportsCenter. Well, Casey, I didn't know that SportsCenter was still on the air. Yeah, you know, the Scott Van Pelt version of SportsCenter, it's pretty good. But there's just no denying the fact that SportsCenter has lost most of its cultural relevance. Growing up in the 90s and 2000s, SportsCenter was must-see TV. Dan Patrick, Keith Olbermann, Keith Olbermann before he was required to apply a straitjacket before leaving his house. The legendary Stuart Scott, Charlie Steiner, Rich Eisen, Linda Cohn, Chris Berman. I mean, ESPN used to have a lot of stars. But anyway, the modern version of SportsCenter, it's hosted by Elle Duncan. Last night was her final broadcast before leaving for Netflix. The tears were flowing. ESPN did an excellent job at pretending that losing Elle Duncan was a monumental loss. They really made Elle Duncan feel like she mattered, when the reality is, it doesn't matter! Towards the end of the broadcast, ESPN provided Elle Duncan with a few minutes to give a farewell speech. Now, she was very gracious. She was very complimentary of the network and her colleagues. It was what you would expect from a farewell speech. But there was one part. There was a microscopic turd that was hidden in this outpouring of emotion. See if you can catch it. Watch for yourself.
I see the headlines about ESPN. Some are earned, some I believe are not. And anyone in this chair knows that criticism is just a part of the job and you take it. But the faces of this place are not the soul of this place. The soul is the thousands of people who work here. There is no hidden agenda here, folks. Just maybe the same one that most of you have there at home, to put food on the table, maybe to send your kids to college, do some work that matters, build a life. ESPN is not some nameless monolith. It runs on individuals.
Did you catch it? According to Elle Duncan, hey there, folks, there's no hidden agenda here. There's no hidden agenda? You mean to tell me there is no hidden agenda at the worldwide leader in woke? In her defense, I guess Elle Duncan isn't technically lying, because the agenda at ESPN isn't hidden, It's in your face. Where do I even begin? This is the same Elle Duncan that hijacked SportsCenter to complain about the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Now, what the hell does that have to do with sports? Outside of Henry Wade sharing a last name with Dwayne Wade, not a damn thing. This is the same Elle Duncan who interrupted a broadcast of the women's tournament, which she erroneously referred to as March Madness. She interrupted the broadcast to hold a moment of silence over something called the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. Now, normally, moments of silence are held to honor people who have passed away. Who passed away in Florida when this legislation was passed 2 or 3 years ago? To my knowledge, no one. According to my inside sources, Rayford Gayfers is still alive and well in the Sunshine State. This is the same Elle Duncan who refused to work with Sage Steele because she wasn't black enough. This is the same Elle Duncan who is reportedly unbelievably difficult to work with behind the scenes. These examples of spreading the good word, preaching the woke faith, this is just Elle Duncan. What about Crying Ryan Clark, the associate pastor at Woke United Methodist? What about Sarah Spain, Mina Kimes, the originator of the term huge embarrassing failure, Bomani Jones, Jamel Hill, Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, who used to be the chief apologist for white privilege at ESPN, Katie Nolan, Maria Taylor? Do I need to keep going? For the better part of 10 years, Around the Horn was dedicated to the woke wiener. Now, ESPN has distanced themselves from politics recently, but for Elle Duncan to say there was no hidden agenda, that is the very definition of polishing the turd. You know, it seems like ESPN bent over backwards to appease Elle Duncan. And look. Elle Duncan is a talented broadcaster, but talent does not equate to ratings. Mina Kimes is talented. Mina Kimes knows a hell of a lot more about the NFL than Stephen A. Smith does. But people actually watch Stephen A. while Mina Kimes struggles to draw flies to a fresh turd. Over the summer, ESPN gave Elle Duncan her own show. Vibe check, checking vibes and hating guys. Of course, no one watched it, but it's a big deal to be given a show at ESPN. They did everything they could to keep her, and Elle Duncan still decided to leave anyway. From ESPN's perspective, this is not a loss. Elle Duncan is very knowledgeable with women's basketball, which is great. That's great. Problem is, women's basketball is on the decline. People aren't watching like they were 2 or 3 years ago. From ESPN's perspective, they got rid of a headache without having to take the medicine. They lost a woke star without having to fire her and deal with the backlash. Next, ESPN should find a way to let go of the masculine version of Elle Duncan, Crying Ryan Clark. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys later.